Let me just give a little bit of context here, and then I'm going to yield to some colleagues and then ask consent that we adopt this common sense change. So start off, we have very broad agreement, probably unanimous agreement, that centralized digital asset exchanges, when they behave as brokers, should be required to report transactions of their customers just like ordinary brokers do, stockbrokers, bond brokers. The problem is that the underlying text of this bipartisan infrastructure bill, while it attempts to do this, I think it's very significantly flawed in how it goes about it. The unintended consequence of the current text is that it will ensnare people and companies and impose this transaction reporting requirement on those to whom it shouldn't apply, and in some cases, people who couldn't even possibly comply. For example, the underlying text of this bill would impose this kind of transaction reporting requirement on crypto transaction validators. These are the people that are building out the blockchain by validating a transaction. They would be obligated to report things like a name and a tax ID number and associated with the dollar amount. They don't have that information. For them, the transaction is just an anonymized number. Doesn't make any sense at all. Also, people who write software code and then have no further involvement in any transactions, I think they'd be captured by this language in the underlying bill. And certainly that doesn't make any sense. It would apply to anybody who's providing a service that effectuates these transactions. You know, think about the parallel in the ordinary securities brokerage business. I mean, think about Merrill Lynch. We require Merrill Lynch to report the information about me if I give them my money to buy stock. That makes sense. But we don't require the electric company that provides electrical service to Merrill Lynch to make any such reporting, because that would not make sense. So what happened was a group of us came together to clarify the rules of who are the actual brokers of cryptocurrency who should be responsible for the transaction reporting requirement. We're not proposing anything that's the least bit sweeping or radical. Our solution just makes clear that a broker means only those persons who conduct transactions on exchanges where customers are buying and selling and trading digital assets. We make sure that the bill does not sweep in software developers. It does not sweep in crypto transaction validators, regardless of which of the various methods they use for the validation. It doesn't sweep in node operators or any other non-brokers. But anyone who owes any tax from a cryptocurrency transaction should pay their tax obligation. And so if you're actually a crypto broker, you would be required to turn over that information under our approach. Our amendment would do that. But it's important that the reporting requirement only apply to those kinds of intermediaries. Now, I don't think any one of us co-sponsors thinks that our solution is absolutely perfect, but it is a big improvement over the underlying text. I would also point out that this space is changing. It's changing fast. A year from now, people will have come up with innovations and applications that we can't even imagine, that probably nobody has even thought of yet. And what I don't want to do is impose a burden that's going to stifle that kind of innovation. What we shouldn't do is have an overly broad mandate or reporting requirement on people who can't even comply. We shouldn't favor or punish any particular methodology or platform design or validation mechanism. And we shouldn't, Mr. President, stifle innovation. So there's time to do this. There's an agreement. It's bipartisan. The White House is on board. We can get this done. We can do it right now. I'm going to yield to my colleague from Wyoming before making a unanimous consent request.